for fighting against bad governance, and which includes those, but mainly that. Saying,
but you can say it now. You are known for fighting bad governance.
Maybe they feared to say because that would implicate the majority shareholder. But I was glad that I was on the list of most admirable women.
And if I didn't say it, I can say it now. You know, if anyone crosses you, they'll really get fire. So excellent. Then in the studio, I have Mr. Tony Mugoya. Mr. Tony Mugoya, you're most welcome to the Capital Gang. Tony Mugoya, CEO, Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance, Vice Chairperson, Uganda Coffee Platform, member of the Global Coffee Platform, member of the Swiss Coffee Traders Association, a coffee exporter, social entrepreneur, agricultural consultant, and rural development expert. 2024 winner of a German African Innovation Incentive Award. Tony Mugoya, all these are your accolades. Congratulations on all of them.
Thank you, Oscar. Good morning.
And you're most welcome to Gang.
Thank you.
Yes, you know coffee people are the rich people in Uganda now. Some of them, they have Uganda money, others have gotten their own money. So coffee is good. I hope Honorable Semuju will find kind words to talk about you and coffee.
Coffee.
Yes. And then I have in the studio another MP. You're most welcome to Honorable Dr. Charles Ayume, Koboko Municipality. You're most welcome to Gang, Doctor.
Yes, good morning, listeners. It's a pleasure to be on this talk show that has stood the test of time.
Thank you. You know, I was looking forward to seeing you and the way you are dressed. You are not dressed like an MP, not dressed like a doctor. And then I saw you and Tony together. I was thinking maybe the other one is the doctor. Looking at size and and then we said, no, this is the MP, this is the doctor.
We are fasting, sir.
Hey, okay, I beg your pardon. But you're most welcome. And it's great that you are like that. So I'd like to start with you, Dr. Ayume, Dr. Charles Ayume, MP, Koboko. When the Trump government came in...
You have not introduced Dr. Ayume very well.
Yeah. Oh, please go on.
He has been the chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Health, and in my view, one of the best chairperson.
Wow. Accolades. You know Semuju.
Thank you very much.
When he says something like
coming from him,
that's a big thing. Yes, because you know banks complain about him just mentioning them, and now for you he says positive in the first, straight away. But yes, so congratulations to you on leading that committee. But what are the consequences of not having USAID funding in Uganda?
Thank you very much. I think it's not only for Uganda, but globally. I think it's not only for Uganda, but globally, because the United States government through USAID funds a lot of things. PEPFAR was one of their biggest flagships since 2003. That was from the Bush administration. Then they also contribute a lot to the World Health Organization. About 15% of...
You know, when you say things like PEPFAR, you need to help Agatha.
PEPFAR is a presidential emergency plan for AIDS relief.
Right.
It came at the beginning of the century. That was 2003. It was a flagship of the Bush administration. And that's when HIV was a pandemic at its peak. So they introduced PEPFAR, and it's been a game changer, providing ARVs and so many services related to combating HIV/AIDS all over the world. And it has given families in Uganda hope. People have lived longer. There are people who have now had HIV for over 30 years, living with it, and they look well. Now, with shutting down of this USAID funding, and even the one to WHO, a number of services are affected. The US government also funds Gavi, That's a global alliance for vaccines. And we know the importance.
From Mwanga Chivumbi, each budget cycle made a similar presentation. But why don't we stop funding, or at least reduce the funding of things that are avoidable? You see, the people in the Ministry of Finance, they don't use words like luxury. They call them, I have forgotten the word they use, but
non-essentials.
No, there is a word they use there, I would remember. But even the budget of this financial year, next financial year, you have about 300 billion for workshop. You have about 100 now billion shilling for travel abroad. You have 700 billion for inland travel. Usually the focus is on travel abroad. But when you look at the government vehicles on the road, returning from weekend with Chaco, the amount of money we spend on inland travel is 700 billion. Replacement of vehicles about 200, maintaining the vehicles about 150 billion. Special meals. The other day I was asking journalists to photograph. We're attending a committee, a parliamentary committee meeting. They brought mandazi, brought chapati, brought everything, and the MPs did not even consume 5%, and all that was taken back. So if you go to every government meeting, all those things are provided.
No, but you government people don't want to eat those things because you fear a lot.
No, not just fearing. But you see, I don't think there is an MP who will leave his home and come to Parliament to have breakfast at 10. But in the technical people, that is an item in the budget that doesn't go away, and the total of that is 300 billion shilling. And even when you make arguments and make a presentation to Parliament, they will not remove them. Because what I see with the budgeting is that the items remain the same. Just change the figures. If it is 250 this year, next year is 260. But the items are never revised. So you are, I'm not saying we have enough money to fund our priorities, but what we have can replace the money that is being withdrawn if it is properly deployed. But I'm not sure that it will be properly deployed. Because while it may appear like a mandate for MPs, it is someone else's business. People in government who are providing these things. So the moment you withdraw it, you have withdrawn the business from them. So they will maintain them because they are the suppliers. But maybe inevitably, because once money is no longer there to provide the thing that Dr. Ayume has outlined, they may have no option but either to reduce on the mandazi or the other items. But this budget, the budget of this financial year and next financial year, which begins in July, all those items are still there. But speaking broadly about budget, Uganda collect taxes that fund nearly half of the budget. The rest of the money is borrowing and money that is given to us. You saw that with COVID, Oscar. Almost all the vaccines that we used for COVID were all donated. And that's why we had argument with the government. Because the money they committed to buy a vaccine, eventually the Auditor General said vaccine is worth about 300 billion, if the report of the Auditor General had that, expired. And then you go for... so they had to go and destroy them. And the cost of that destruction was either 9 billion, then they had to use money for vaccine to go and destroy
the
expired drugs. So the management, you need to tighten the management of the health sector itself, because this is the first time. There was time they supplied us with the sugar-related medicine in Wakiso, yet we needed malaria. I was with Dr. Bukenya Gilbert. We went for a meeting of MPs, Professor Gilbert Bukenya, meeting of MPs from Wakiso. And then he was quarreling, you guys, you mean even basic things like a disease incident, you can't get them right. How do you begin giving us too much medicine for sugar-related pressure? yet we don't have enough medicine for malaria. So you need to tighten the management of the health sector, and then you deal with the other issues in the budget that even if you don't fund them, life will not come to an end.
Let me go to Agatha before coming to you, Tony. Nora Oragai, regular listener, and sometimes a panelist here, said she agrees with an economist, James Shikwati, Kenyan, I know him. If this USAID loss gives Africa breathing space, the stronghold that Africa has had is made to be believed as the narrative that it's poor when it is actually rich. So maybe the American president has given us a chance. That's coming to you, Agatha. And then I spoke to a senior journalist, said, no, it's much more than health, this USAID thing. For you, what do you think?
So, first, I agree that it's much more than health. And I will even agree from my personal perspective that USAID was funding our operations at Agora 100%. So
you are the people who are in that 4 million. We kept wondering who's receiving.
So it means that from just my side, you have 13 jobs that are on the verge of being lost. Yeah. But altogether, I think USAID was supporting organizations that were employing over 40,000 Ugandans. So yeah, you're looking at over 40,000 jobs lost. You're looking at over $400 million out of the economy. So yeah, that's bad. But coming to, I think Nora's comment, and also saying that we are rich, that this is an opportunity for us to. So the health sector in this country, and the health expert here can tell us, is funded over 50% by the external people, over 50%. And of that over 50%, USAID was funding 80% of that. So it's about 261 billion for AIDS. It's about 100 billion for malaria. It's TB and all that. So I think that's a problem. But to think, people who think that our governments will care about that should look at, since January, since Trump came to power, we've passed 3 supplementary budgets. 3. So since the year began, there's been a supplementary budget passed each month. January, February, and March. If you looked at those supplementary budgets, because ideally a supplementary budget should have come for an issue like this, the freezing of or the suspension of USAID, because that's an emergency. You have people whose lives were depending on this. So you'd expect that in this supplementary budget, they are coming to address this. An issue that goes to the very people's existence. You have about 1.5 million people living with HIV. You have malaria that you cannot treat. You have TB that you cannot treat, and these many other diseases. But what does our supplementary budget have every time it comes? The first item is always State House. So this
one had coffee. That's why I invited Tony Mugabe.
Yeah, as one of them. But the first one is still State House, about 8 billion. You wonder what emergencies happen that people didn't plan for to give to State House. We've never had any emergencies in State House. The floods of the other day should have been proper emergencies, but you don't see something like that. So you have State House getting lots of money month in now, month out. You have the Ministry of Defense and military, but you don't have anything about USAID cuts. So the priorities that Honorable Semuju was talking about, we have not seen that change since January, when this issue came up, when they realized that there's no USAID funds to count on. We have not seen that addressed in supplementary budgets, but also we haven't seen it addressed in the budget discussion that is happening now for the next financial year. In some ways, you're being
kind to Dr. Charles Ayume here, because he's NRM. He has not been shouting out, basically. That's what you're saying.
Well, I think
that's what you're saying.
I actually
because
think he has.
In his presentation,
but
been,
I have seen him shout out, because you see, even NRM people are as frustrated as us. I saw him shouting recently. Was it after this financial year's budget was passed, sent to the president, and the president trashed it, sent it back with orders. Your reallocations, I don't want to see them. And I saw him that time lamenting, like the rest of us. So maybe he has shouted.
But on the new SAID hasn't lamented yet. He keeps saying, in 3 months' time, we're going to see.
Well, so I want to tell him that as a doctor, he should know that patients don't have 3 months without any whatever. So at least this is where we should have seen the government come in to bridge these gaps, at least with the plan that we are working on this, that we are now. The budget was already, I think, the discussion under when this happened. You'd expect a government to, realign, have other discussions, and we see that because the budget is about to be passed. I think this should be this month or this coming month of April or May.
Yeah.
So those are issues we would have expected to see.
To be in the supplementary.
But the priorities are still the mandazi that Honorable Semuju talked about, State House, military to participate in elections in 2026, the army and all that. And I think it's worrying. Not that we expected any better, but we had maintained some hope.
Mr. Tony Mugoya, this is a chance to welcome Honorable Abdul Katuntu. Welcome to Gang. I think you passed via Mawanda Road.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't advise anybody to take that.
You can take it, but plan ahead. Yes, I was a bit surprised as well.
First of all, I want to appreciate Oscar for serving us with very nice Ugandan coffee. And I want to encourage all Ugandans to drink coffee roasted in Uganda. Star Cafe is one of our own brand. Yeah. Very good coffee. So if we drink more of this, then we will help to boost our economy.
You know, we have 3 people here who don't take anything because of Ramadan. Maybe from next week they will take.
Next week, surely.
But for us, we shall enjoy the cafe. And
yeah.
you've done a kalango for Star Cafe that powers the gang.
Yeah, Star Cafe and others are actually out there for us to drink. Talking about budgets, this is an African problem. If you look at the contribution of coffee to our economy, coffee exports account for about 18 to 20%. That's about $1 billion of export earnings. But we are producing about 20% per acre of what Vietnam, which is another coffee country, is producing. So I think we have potential if we increase production per acre to the levels.
Don't go into coffee yet. That's
no, I know.
Okay, we're still on USAID.
Yeah, so basically we think that by increasing coffee incomes, we have a target of increasing to $5 billion of export earnings. We shall be able to cover most of our own budget requirements. So as
you're optimistic.
Yes, that's what I think. If we do it, we can. So there's really a self-reliance requirement that we as Africans need to do than to think of USAID being the one to fund our own priorities.
Tony, let's wait for the next topic and we'll probably murder you there. Yeah. Because I don't know if you're a recipient of 127 billion.
Not at all.
Not at all. So, Honorable Abdul Katuntu, you've been listening in as you came in. We were talking about the loss of USAID, the gaps created in the medical industry, health sector, and wider, like Agatha has pointed out. And Agatha today has been gentle, maybe because she's seated next to Dr. Ayume. You're a lucky man. Usually should have been saying, you NRMs, you are not doing this, you are not doing this. A Koboko man, maybe.
Let me also declare some interest that he's been my friend since before he became an MP. But I will.
So you have a few NRM friends.
I will come for him if I find reason to. That
right.
can save him. Yeah.
Okay. So the loss of USAID, Agatha puts it well, says, how come there's no noise? And in maybe 3 months' time, we're going to have trouble?
Well, there's no crisis. There's no crisis. It's only when there's a crisis that will have the noise.
Is that how we operate?
That's how we operate. You see, you wait when the figures start coming. And for example, from the Minister of Health, that this particular month you've had this and this, the number of people losing their lives because of what do you call it, HIV has increased and so on, blah blah. Then you'll make the noise. As of now, that crisis is not there because the figures have not started coming out. Maybe when Minister of Health starts coming out the figures, that's when we shall make noise.
Is it like when we had a long heat, sunshine and so on, and no one fixed the drainages, and then when the floods came?
Absolutely.
And we are saying, hey, floods.
Yes. Hey, you people, what has been happening? I think that's... But let me say this. You see, what is happening in the US today is that it depends on which side Donald Trump has woken up on that morning. And you've seen it with the tariffs. Today, tomorrow, the other day, it changes like weather. You can't be sure of what he's going to do next. So even now, we don't know whether this is going to be sustained in the long run, or tomorrow you wake up and say, by the way, after the 19 days, I am doing a drawback on some of these policies and so on. So, but having said that, let's look at, and my best examples are countries like South Africa, countries like North Korea, countries like Iran. Because of the world sanctions, and many of them, for example, between Iran and North Korea by the West, these countries have managed to grow capacities to some very, very impressive levels. South Africa did that during apartheid, and it grew eventually to sustainable capacities. Iran has done that. North Korea has done that. Maybe this is an opportunity for the begging world. What I don't believe in is this, that, we are now in trouble. There is this very big magnanimous person. We shouldn't be in this place in the first place. It is time for the African countries or the begging world to grow their own capacities. Because when you look at our economies, they are weak, yes, but we can achieve the minimum. We can achieve the minimum. And Oscar, because let us look at it. Even if we are to turn up off the entire donor funding, how much money are we going to lose? And if we look at prioritizing our own expenditures as a country, prioritizing it, how much money can we save? When I was driving in, I had the SMG talking about mandazi. Of course, I think when he talks about mandazi, he wants to speak to the ordinary person to get the point. But it is bigger than mandazi. Where are our priorities? Is it that this country cannot afford to pick this bill, or a reasonable part of it? My own view, and the honest view of many people, is we can. We can, absolutely. So, to me, this could be, what do the English people say? That for every dark cloud, there is that silver lining. And the silver lining is, guys, we now need to know that there is no free lunch. These Agathas who have been picking a lot of money said, I was coming, said they are blah, blah. You should now grow your capacity to fund your own activities, other than somebody saying he's picking you and picking your bills, and tomorrow is busy saying, no. Yes.
If the government has failed to look after its sick people, why are you expecting us activists to get money to fund activities?
I'm talking about both of you. Let me tell you, whether it is you or government, I'm actually talking to everybody, all of us who are thinking that there is Big John in DC who should be picking our basic bills. We can afford to do it. It's just about discipline. It's about tightening our belts and getting our priorities correct. And I can tell you, eventually we will. Let's just have this crisis. Sometimes, for those of our parents, if you have a kid and you want this kid to know that this thing burns, you sometimes let him touch it. And then he will not touch it again. It's part of growing up. I don't know whether you've read that book of who developed who, whether it is Europe or Africa, who developed who and so on. These are the sort of circumstances we should be discussing. So, is it bad? Maybe yes, maybe no. Can we do better? Absolutely. And I think, Oscar, I'm not one of those guys who are really crying and I'm losing sleep and so on over the loss. I'm losing sleep because what can we do to sort out this mess? That is what we should be preoccupied with, other than like saying, no, this guy should continue giving us money. You know, we literally become beggars. And at some point, we don't have to beg. And let me give you an example as I go off the microphone. The Western world, Europe, was debating basically on DC for many things, including their own national security. Today, they realize that because the biggest alliance post-World War II, political alliance, has been the US and the Western Europe, the so-called NATO, the biggest political alliance. Now, Europe knows that there is no longer a big boy to protect them. Yeah. And you know what they're doing now? They are revising their defense budgets and so on, because now they know that Washington
actually
may not
been
be
galvanized.
there. Sorry? Oh, they have been.
Galvanized.
They have been. And that's why a few even of pounds or euros coming also, forget about the US, coming here, also going to be turned off, because now they're also reorganizing their own societies and so on. So the world has changed thanks to Trump, and I think we may in the short run suffer, but maybe that's what we need.
I wanted to say just something small. So when this order first came up, there was a letter from the Ministry of Health telling people to go home.
Days.
Yeah, at the beginning in Jan. So this was telling some of the health workers to go home because the project was being funded by USAID and there's no money. And it ended by saying, but they can stay and be patriotic. And, that letter is there by Diana Twine. I have it. You know what's strange is that 2 days after that letter, politicians were asking for vehicles. The parliament, parliament, the leadership of parliament was asking for money for vehicles. So you have on one hand an important issue like health and telling people to go home, but you have on the other people budgeting for more vehicles. So and that goes to the prioritizing that everyone was speaking about here. In fact, I remember someone asking on Twitter, say, can we tell also politicians to be patriotic and work for free? But you expect doctors to work for free. And like I said, Oscar, it's been 3 months. We have not seen a single measure talked about that this is how we are going to stand in the gap that USAID is leaving behind, and over critical issue like health, like medicine for patients.
I advise you to engage finance and Minister of Health. I think there are contingent plans that are doing it, especially in the next financial year, to bridge that gap. They're really doing it. That's just read the documents now of the next budget.
Dr. Ayume is here, but what Agatha is saying, some people may not be able to wait 3 months. And here, finally, I found, he did say, Dr. Charles Ayume did shout out on Twitter, says, okay, the US has their own rights to make decisions, but you as a doctor and a member of parliament, what are you going to tell the 1.2 million people living with HIV and AIDS in Uganda? And when the stockouts happen, and you ask them to reconsider the decision. So you've done some mild shouting out, Dr. Ayume.
Yes, I at the beginning,
the key word here is mild.
I tweeted on Trump's handle, but whether I'm sure that he has handlers who read it. But I want to say that government is taking all the necessary measures. I think when we were in one of the NRM caucus sittings in State House in February, we raised the issue to His Excellency the President. Unfortunately, Semojo has not come, but if you had come to one of those sittings, you would have you would have been able to get it firsthand. But we raised that issue and to His Excellency the President, and it was deferred back. So they are behind the scenes discussions going on. Ministry of Health officials are doing countrywide visits of regional referral hospitals and districts to do the assessment. One of the areas that's going to really be affected is staffing, because some of the projects, you find 70% of the HIV run facilities, either at districts or in regional referral hospitals, are funded by USAID. So it is not a top-bottom decision, but Ministry of Health is making deliberate efforts to go there and plan with the workers at what can we do. One of the issues being proposed is integration of services, because most of these programs have been coming with verticalization. You find a very beautiful HIV-built clinic in one corner of a hospital or of a health center but we are saying, can we now integrate services so that all the staff within a health facility at the district are able to take care of non-communicable diseases, of HIV, of TB, as we look at incremental funding for staff recruitment. When I was chair of the health committee, to address some of the issues of human resource, we did a costing of 100 billion shillings to ensure that all the hospitals had certain cadres of health workers. The entire budget is about 4 trillion shillings, and that's a sector budget if we look at the National Development Plan for recruitment. But we are saying, can we start with 100 billion shillings?
Yeah.
And I would want to thank the Ministry of Finance that the last financial year they gave us 20 billion shillings to recruit.
Of the 100?
Yes. Of course, we didn't say we wanted...
100. The desire was 4 trillion.
No, 4 trillion is...
They changed it to
100.
For the 100, and is thanking finance for giving 20.
But you see, Honorable Semojo, 4 trillion is the ideal with the new revision, because we now have super specialized services and all that. But there is no point in giving a rural regional referral 100% staffing when there are issues to do with accommodation, equipment. So we have said that this is over a 10-year period. The ideal would be 4 trillion. What we propose to Ministry of Finance is give us 100 billion over 5 years. And I'm happy to say this, that last financial year we were given 20 billion to address 5 critical hospitals. That was Kayunga, Yumbe, Entebbe, Chirudu, and Kawempe. So there's goodwill on the side of government. The second point is integration of services to avoid that verticalization as we explore other measures for domestic financing. And I think one of them that has been at cabinet level for some time is the National Health Insurance Bill, plugging wastage, corruption. I think Honorable Samuju talked about issues to do with governance. That money can be found. We just have to be a bit intentional.
Dr. Ime, preparing for this topic, I was told that it's not just the people you've talked about as human resource, that people have these jobs, then they have a contract, then they have other people they have got to pay. And when this all ceases, some people are in dire straits.
Yes, and that's why I told you.
Like subcontractors and so on.
And that's why I mentioned, and I've sent you a tweet, I think from the US government, where they had said
that they have reconsidered.
They have reconsidered for some life-threatening emergencies and so forth. But issues like workshops, capacity building, advocacy,
family things.
Yes, those can be shelved off. So our prayer is that in the next...
This is by Nick Schifrin.
You know, also, Oscar, much as we may be here crying about this, the US also has the government has a responsibility to its own citizens. That's why they have come up with this DOGE, the Department of Government, which is trying to look at what they call a wastage. Are they looking at, I sort of appreciated when some time back Donald Trump, president, was reading exactly how much money was being spent in which country over what.
He unpacked it.
Yes, when he unpacked and goes in the details. I don't think the American taxpayer would certainly be happy that his tax is being used for some of those activities. So what they are trying to do is also rationalization, to look at where exactly they can really assist and there is a need, and where they think it is wastage. Really, they also have both a political and a moral obligation to cut the wastage. We cannot cry because they are cutting wastage on us.
It's interesting. Nora again says the cost of a gen expert machine needed for testing TB and managing HIV can be about 90 million Uganda shillings. So this would be like 2 MPs. Two MPs, lots of 2 salaries.
We have to be frugal and intentional about where we allocate resources. But I think this money can be found even from within our budget.
And you see, even planning. You remember when we had just come this particular parliament, I was privileged to chair a committee, and Charles Sear was one of my committee members on COVID. And you could see the wastage. You know, for example, you do an ICU, you get you buy an ICU equipment, but you've not constructed the place where to install it. And that equipment is in the store. There are so many wastages like that. You've already spent money. You need ICU facility. The equipment is there.
Well, we can ask a direct question. Has the Ginger ICU started working, Ginger Hospital?
No, unfortunately. but let me put this into context. Is that
Agatha is the one, you know that seat is the hot seat, the Ofonopondo seat is the NRM seat. So people have been gentle.
Trust Charles. Charles is, he has his stuff, he knows his stuff.
Let me put this into context.
It's not any other person.
For an ICU to function, you need the equipment, you need the infrastructure, and then you need the human resource.
Yeah.
So much as we had done well on the equipment,
for Ginger Hospital,
you can fast track procurements for all over the country.
For all over the country.
But
all over the country.
No, but Ginger has the ICU equipment.
Yes.
What other
we had even other equipments all over the country.
All over hospitals. Now the issue was to remodel some of the buildings, and that takes time. Even when you've done that, you need to...
Dr. Yume, who is remodeling what? They're only remodeling Mulago.
No, I'm saying where you're going to put the ICU. Because
right.
you need to repurpose and then make the building better so that it conforms to ICU and infection prevention control standards. But then you also need to recruit anesthesiologists, critical care workers, and so forth. So
and they are there.
All that is a
They are not there.
No, they are not there.
You see, in his own report, Dr. Yume, the last I interacted with, Mulago, when you aggregate, because Mulago doesn't have an ICU unit in one place, you can go to
Heart Institute,
and they have, and then another one. They are supposed to have 28 beds. Only half are working. Staff not there. So the beds are there, the equipment is there. Even they don't need to construct rooms for them, but they don't have staff to operate them.
Government, before that, ICU used to have about 12 beds. Now, when Mulago was refurbished, they took the bed capacity to 28. But then we need to recruit extra staff to be able to operationalize. Because one ICU...
Where have the staff gone?
You see, when you increase the bed capacity, one ICU bed needs about 3 intensive care nurses. 1 per 8-hour shift. So if you're 24 hours...
But we don't have them.
No,
they are
we
not
don't
there.
have.
They are not there.
Where have they gone?
Now,
We don't have them.
We have
they
State
don't
House.
go anywhere if they are not there.
have been
State
passing
House
our
now
funding.
has 28
We have been passing our funding requests to the budget committee.
nurses and
Honorable
medical
Semo
doctors,
just installed,
28 in State House. I don't know who is sick.
But it has always been an unfunded priority. So if they can give us those
And this came out, remember, Charles, in our report 4 years ago. And we discussed this in detail. So look here, for these ICs to function, you need this sort of stuff. 4 years ago, up to date, every year, the health committee is recommending,
Agatha is about to say Charles is also lamenting.
But isn't he?
There's a report. You just have to read the reports. Charles has done his work, really. And if you read the reports, you know that you have somebody who knows what this
And
campaign
he's
is.
talking about the budget committee that Honorable Semju sits on. He's not saying that Honorable Semju always has a minority report. In this time, he authored it alone. Like, he's the only one who signed on it.
No,
but no one cares.
but
The other NRM guys
but
like
to
him
put it into
will go with the majority
between
one.
Katuna and Kampala, we only have 4 ICU beds, and that is in Barara. So assuming anything happens,
with staffing.
4 ICU beds.
Okay. Functional.
Katuna
But fully
And
functional.
Kampala. But every year we put it in our health committee report, because Kabale just needs some, I think, 500 million to make their ICU operational. Same with Masaka. And on record for having said that's the price of a V8 Land Cruiser. So if we don't buy one for government, the Masaka ICU can work. It just needs 680 million to be remodeled. But the equipment is there.
So
we
it
need
has
to be
been
very
there
intentional
for
about
years.
it.
Not that it was bought last year.
Yeah.
It has been there for years. Most of it,
I had known
we
that ginger
inspected
equipment
them.
is there. I didn't know that other
I don't
referrals
think
also
so.
have.
We inspected them 4 years ago.
We inspected. And
4 years ago.
But
Okay.
there's work going on, and I think the ICU building in Arua
Work
is almost
without
finished.
staff. Your
Pardon?
report says the staff is not there.
So,
I have mentioned that we
Yeah.
have given hospitals money this financial year to do recruitment, and it is up to them to prioritize where do they want to put for the critical staff.
okay, so maybe we still need that USAID funding, but anyway, we'll put it in conclusion. We're going to stop for a break, and after the break, we'll also touch on coffee. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. We are going to go to coffee. Someone here on Twitter said, what happened to discussion on Umeme? What happened to discussion on floods? Umeme we shall discuss next week. Floods, maybe sometime we'll get people responsible for that. But don't forget, in Uganda's summer, so to speak, I guess nothing was worked on. Then SC Villa will host Vipers FC on Saturday, 29th, that's today, at Wankulukuku, 4 p.m. And there's a fee to pay. Go and support SC Villa, the Jogos. So, Mr. Tony Mugaya, we've had several discussions on Gang about coffee, but the first thing that caught our eye here is the supplementary budget Agatha talked about. So there's 60 million. Agatha, you could refresh my mind. You always know these budgets. 60 million is going towards, is it the processing, the hub? Then the 67 million is going to a coffee park.
Yeah.
So could you just, first, what is the coffee park?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think people should know that the budget cuts are not only affecting the health sector, they are affecting the agricultural sector as well. Personally, I've got communication from USAID that they are going to cut funding to coffee because they have been funding capacity building to coffee as well. The European donors also
What have they been funding?
capacity building of coffee institutions, agricultural institutions. Yes, they have. They have been doing that.
Like what is this capacity building? I just want to understand.
Yeah, for example, if you look at the coffee policy, for example, these policies that the Ministry of Agriculture has been passing, the fertilizer policy, USAID has been funding the workshops, basically consultations to come up with these kind of policies.
So I think Trump is right.
Yeah, so for me as a coffee grower, well, there's no direct
loss to you.
There's no direct loss to me because capacity building is not a tangible thing that benefits me. But for institutions, I think maybe there should be some significant.
But the coffee association was also closed.
Yes, they could be
here in Uganda before Trump did anything.
Exactly. But the Europeans also have communicated to us that there's going to be a significant drawdown towards the agricultural development support. And the Europeans have been supporting more tangible things, including infrastructure development in our agricultural sector. So as Ugandans and Africans, I think we need to really stand up and and take up the responsibility to do this.
Yeah. But away from that, I'll ask Honorable Semuju, maybe he will have more information on where that money is going to. Away from that, what explains Uganda's success in recent times with coffee farming? A lot of coffee farmers now have money in their pocket and are happier than previously.
Yeah, I think we need to look at the global coffee market trends. Globally, we see that coffee consumption has been increasing. We have the rate of increase in consumption globally at 2.2%. China is increasing at 15%. So in the past, the coffee drinkers were mainly in America and Western Europe alone. But now Asia is a very big consumer of coffee. Even Brazil, which grows coffee, is the second largest consumer of coffee in the world. So I think this big coffee market that is increasing every year is an opportunity for Ugandan producers to earn more from the coffee, which naturally grows in our country. So I would like to encourage all Ugandans, because 70% of our land area is suitable for coffee growing. So let's grow more coffee, because the global market is there. And I think we have really an opportunity as producers to earn more from our coffee. And coffee is a crop that unites all Ugandans. So irrespective of where you belong, I think we need to cash in on this coffee, which grows so well in our soils.
No, but Oscar, Mr. Muga should also explain that actually, if the world market is increasing, yes, but also there was a crisis in some coffee producing countries, Vietnam and Brazil, and that's how because that explains the current market prices partly. So I think it will be unfair to the audience if you don't tell them that we have taken advantage of other people's problems. For I think around 2-3 seasons, we could still be having those sort of prices.
Yeah. But I will also tell you that if you look at the price trends in the last 15 years, coffee prices in Uganda have increased 5 times. 5 times.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the last 2 years and even projected for the next 2-3 years.
Exactly. But the same situation is true for cocoa as well.
Yes.
Yeah, same situation is true for cocoa as well. So I think we have an opportunity, and we should consolidate this chance that we have as Uganda to increase our incomes from coffee, which we can easily do.
I'm reminded here that cocoa is now the second biggest crop earner, bringing in about $300 million. Is that correct?
Exactly, and coffee is contributing about $1.2 billion every year to Uganda.
But you know, Mr. Tony Muga, you are on the board of all these associations and all.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, there was a bit of funding to institutions, so you were a beneficiary. And then the Coffee Association was closed down. And all this has not affected the coffee farmer?
I would say no. The coffee farmer is not directly affected, because it depends on how much you grow and basically how much you sell. So yes, the institutions may be affected, but it's time for everybody to be, I think, sustainable. Coming from the private sector, I believe in sustainability, commercial sustainability, not funds or free funds.
Yeah. And this business of sending coffee to Kabale, has it started working? So, Tuntungamo.
Well,
has it started working? Are you sending coffee there?
I don't have intentions to send coffee there, but I've heard of such plans. But
you even gave it with a bit of laughter. So
no, the
isn't
coffee
it going
market,
to be compulsory to send coffee to
the coffee market is really global. I don't think any single country can manage to restrict the marketing of coffee. So I think as long as we're in a free market economy, we shall continue to sell coffee where it fetches the highest price. And that is our position.
So if Ntungamo gives you a high price, that's the only time you can send it to Ntungamo?
That's the only time.
You will not send it by government or instruction?
No, I think we are still in a free market economy. That's what I think. And if things are the way they are, we shall continue selling where the price is highest.
Let's go to this MP, Honorable Semuju, who passed that budget. Honorable Semujo. So you've heard from Mr. Tony Muguya, who is a coffee person and the CEO of Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance. So if he says they are not sending coffee to Ntungamo, why are you giving them 60 billion?
You see, the trouble with Ntungamo, go back to when it started. I am still on the budget committee. There was an item in the budget committee of 37 billion. And as we are in Munyonyo processing the budget, Mr. Ruawogo, who marries one of Museveni's daughters,
I don't know whether the detail is necessary.
It is, people must understand. Arrives in Munyonyo with a group.
But also this is the budget of when? 2022, 2023?
About 2 years ago. That they have come to speak about value addition. And they needed $100 million, which is 370 billion. But they had provided 37. So some of us made a noise that if this is something worth, why doesn't government do it itself? Eventually the money was given, and another 70 billion was put in the budget of this financial year to make it 107. But as even the financial year, mid-financial year, then they bring a supplementary. One supplementary is for electricity from Mirama Hills to the factory, and then another 60 is for a park.
A coffee park.
The questions we asked when we were in the budget committee, what is the relationship, the very question you're asking? What is the relationship between the taxpayer whose money you are picking and that man is called Tugume?
Nelson, yes.
Nelson. So what is the relationship? The people who
What do you mean? The owner of the hub?
Yes.
Through Inspire Africa.
The government people told us that we are still discussing acquiring shares, acquiring a stake. But the money has already gone. The same question that Oscar we have asked about each and every intervention in a private company. When they gave Magora money for that pharmaceutical, we asked them, they said they will acquire interest in the pharmaceutical. We said, have you valued the company? Because Magora can wake up one day and he says that, because usually there is the infrastructure, but there is also the knowledge. You can say his contribution to the factory is 1 trillion. Because we have had similar problems with Atiak, where we have put now nearly $700 billion. We have 40% shareholding. We are not on the board. So Amina and his son, and I don't know whether husband, they continue running the company. So the question you asked Oscar, why do we put in the money? We have asked government to answer those questions. They can't answer. And you see these people, I told you the story of Magora. When they were given the money first, was money for vaccine during COVID. Then they said the president is going to do a tour. Do you know what they did? I have said that many times. They said to prevent Museveni from accessing their inside, just splash chemicals all over. Then when he comes and they are smelling, you tell him, Mr. President, it is not safe for you to enter inside. So he inspects the physical building and then he goes away. These things, I am telling you, they are real.
Some of these things can't be real.
I am telling you. Museveni went to inspect Magora. They said that time he was in Iruzira, that's where he was going to produce vaccine for COVID. So they splash chemicals. So Museveni arrives, that old man, and they tell him it is not safe for you to enter inside. So his team saw nothing. Then the following year, Museveni was giving money for a pharmaceutical. Even the one of
why
coffee.
Does he need to see himself? He has all these advisors and so on and so forth.
Yeah, he has
Most
come.
likely he can send some people to see this.
So
thing.
he needs to see himself, but also he has come with experts who will do reports after. Why do you think Epineti has prevented the people from seeing? Even seeing, just seeing, because many of us MPs are lay people. But even the people
Yeah,
cannot
but,
be allowed to go and because
no,
the
but-
building, Oscar, you don't need to be an engineer to see a 5-storied building. That actually there is a building. There may not be equipment, but at least I have seen the building. But even just seeing Pinetti puts their soldiers for you not to see. And these are the Museveni investments. So the trouble with us in Parliament, including NRM MPs, you sit with them on the committee and they are all quarreling. Bring this. But even before documents are done, they have already done a report saying that you passed the money. The very people are asking, bring this document. What is our stake? So we have no stake, Oscar, in that coffee.
Let me go to
It
Agatha
started
before.
with Ruabogo. The only reason it started was because you have a new presidential advisor on export called Odrick Ruabogo, who marries Museveni's daughter. So he has access. Can you imagine even he went to address cabinet during a retreat? Chankwanza. And during that retreat, Museveni said, Ruabogo and his team, they didn't do COVID test. Let them speak to you and they'll go away. Then he told the MPs, cabinet minister and technocrats how they don't know how to communicate. Said, okay, I'll organize for you another meeting to come and meet cabinet. So that's how these decisions are made. Ridiculous as it sounds. That an in-law will walk to his father-in-law. He says, we now want money for value addition. You remember, Oscar, the scandal of taking Museveni to Serbia in a bar, that they were taking him to a coffee shop. So and
called a coffee bar.
No, this was a bar, a real bar where they drink alcohol from. They just washed it for the damn Museveni came, put a shelf and put.
We discussed it here with Jada.
So all that now collapsed. It is in Tungamo.
People don't know these things.
Yeah.
It is now in Tungamo from exporting coffee to Serbia. Now the road is to Tungamo.
Charles, on social media, they're also killing you, so I'll read out a few for you. But Agatha, Abdul, when you have these two conspiracy theory people, Semuju and Agatha, you first give them a microphone.
We are not we are not conspiracy theorists. We speak with facts. Semuju has done minority reports about these budgets, so I'm very sure those are not conspiracy theories.
Yeah, but he adds in a lot more other spices.
No, you just don't want him to add all the facts. You are complaining that he's adding that Ruabogo marries President Museveni's daughter, which is a fact. The leader of opposition was visiting these white elephant projects last year. He visited Atiak, visited that pharmacy you were talking about, and in Tungamo. I think it's Silvoa that he didn't get access again. So when you look at his reports, the one of Ntungamo is a favorable report. It's as if he didn't find, apart from the problems we are talking about that Honorable Semuju is raising. For example, what's the relationship between the government of Uganda and Inspire Africa or Nelson Tugume? There's no memorandum of understanding. We don't know if we are shareholders in that factory as a government, or if they just chose someone and said, luck has fallen on you to get lots of money to do this thing. So those are the things he raises. I don't think he found any issue with the progress of the factory itself. So it seems it's
so that is happening
on course to be completed. So the first issue is that you are giving out money to people that there are no contracts, no contractual obligations that we should know we are going to hold this person accountable if this and this doesn't happen. That is not there. The story I had, the background story that Honorable Semuju maybe didn't know about how Ruabogo, who marries the president's daughter, got to be the one to defend the first budget of 37 billion. Because every time, I think Parliament had made that the money to Ruabogo, and people would come and say, but Ruabogo didn't get any money. And the question was, if this is the person that came to defend this budget before a committee, he's the one responsible for this budget. So when I was talking about that with people in the coffee sector, and this is how it starts, there's a coffee consortium that coffee traders and growers started, and they had wanted to get money to invest. So Nelson Tugume was part of this. Now they tell me that Rwabogo comes in later because they went to look for someone. This is in the words of the people that started that. Of course, they later fell out. You know that many of them didn't get this money and they fell out, and some of them have been here talking about that coffee bar in Serbia. So
we've invited Jackie here.
So Rwabogo comes in because apparently they want someone who the MPs will fear to ask questions. They are still together at that moment. So they so they invite Odrek Rwabogo, the son-in-law of Museveni, because the MPs will not.
The MPs were almost kneeling in Munyonyo.
You see?
He came. I am telling you.
Now this is confirming that story, because that's the story I got from the people that were dealing with that. That we went, looked for someone who can help us to go before the budget committee.
So take it to the end, because we are running.
It's very important. And because now he's confirming that. So this person, regardless of what the MPs say, I think that time the shadow of finance was Mwanga Chivumbi wrote a minority report questioning that money. No one gives any answers. It's passed. This is 2023, 2024. 2024, 2025, another 75 billion is added to Inspire Africa. And that makes it 112 million. In fact, Tugume later amended and said that the money required altogether is $122 million. It moved from 1 million. 100. Yeah, it became 122.
So this addition of 60 recently given, what is that for if he didn't need it?
What do you mean if he didn't need it?
102, that's what
he needs $122 million. Now, as per now, altogether, if you count the money that has gone to him, it's 180 billion.
60 over what he needed.
No. We are talking now in shillings. In shillings, it's 180 billion Uganda shillings.
Right.
He's looking for $122 million. So according to him, there's still a very huge deficit.
Requirement.
Yeah, that he still requires. So the questions
and Inspire Africa is sure Uganda Uganda government will give them that money.
Yeah. Because they have already given them that money. You think they will start and stop there and say, let's lose what we have already put in. But the question has always been, Oscar, how was Inspire Africa selected, or Tugume, to get this money? What is its legal status? You have UCDA, at least that time it was still there and functional. And everyone is asking, why isn't this money going through legally established structures of this country of coffee? Why is it going to Rwabogo or Nelson Tugume? And those are the questions the LOP asks in that it's like his 6-page report about this. What is the criteria? How do we select who gets money for what? Because you have that guy of Day Farmer, what is his name? Magola. You have Chak. You have Lubowa. There's no clear direction about how these things are made. And also there's no guarantee about government of Uganda's return on investment or shares or whatever in these things. Yeah.
And you have a coffee farmer here who's saying he's not really affected. But there's a Timothy came on several tweets here, says the increase in coffee, cocoa yields and pulses is a big percentage attributed to USAID, including legislative support for laws in the agricultural sector, Uganda Grain Council, NARO, MAAIF, defunct UCDA, Uganda Cotton, and so on. This is in response to you, Abdu. Then it says, Oscar, USAID has been funding lots of agricultural research and funding the dissemination of agricultural technologies to the end users, especially the smallholder farmers that make the majority of farmers. One of those projects is the Feed of the Future, USAID project. So yes, Abdu, you're on microphone. On coffee.
No, not the other one. Yeah. The other one, I really disagree. You see, I always want to look at where the problem is, other than looking at symptoms. As long as Uganda lacks a clear policy or law on strategic intervention, we'll have these problems. Because what happens is whoever has access to Route 1 Uganda is the one who picks the money. And then once he has convinced brought one Uganda, whether duly or unduly, it becomes what they call a presidential directive. And ministers, when they appear in Parliament, say this was a presidential directive, this was a presidential directive, and so on. And I think that's, if we are to tackle that problem, we need to handle policy, we need to handle law, so that each and every Ugandan or stakeholder would know that for me to access public money for purposes of strategic intervention, these are the requirements. And the process should be transparent, so that if Dr. Francis, Dr. Charles, you know,
it's okay to use his father's name.
You know, let me tell you, the late Honorable, Right Honorable Francis, you know, was my teacher. Yeah, I think one of the best lawyers this country, most honored, decorated lawyer this country has ever had. So he's always in my head. So Charles, sorry. But your father was a great man.
They call me Ajinganda after my father. There is no offense in it.
No, you want to get credit which is not yours. The other is for the light moment aside.
Yeah.
So, Oscar, we need a law in place. We need a policy in place, so that the parliamentarians who are actually appropriating this money know whether the person who has been given this money actually qualifies. We also need people who are transparent. This thing, for example, up to now, there is this person on Entebbe Road called P what?
Pineti Aristidina.
That one. You see, nobody accesses that project. And to me, when you are talking about a hospital, I told you a couple of weeks ago here, a hospital is not brick and mortar. Charles, you know it. When people say, we want to go and see that hospital, a specialized hospital is beyond your cement, iron bars, sand and water.
Even those ones are
you
not
get
there.
It? Because
no, they are there now.
You
brick
see,
and mortar is there.
that has nothing to do.
Just
That cement is here, the iron bars and sand. What we are talking about as a specialized hospital, you are talking about the equipment, you are talking about human resource, because that is exactly 70% of a specialized hospital. And nobody has seen that sort of thing. Not even one. So we are looking at a building. There's a hospital. What is a hospital if you are building something like a mall? Oscar, as long as we don't have policy, as long as we don't have a law, then we will have this conversation over and over and over again. Today it is now Magola, now coffee. Tomorrow we'll be talking about cotton. The other day we'll be talking about some other
hospitals
and so on. And some time back I had an opportunity and we had a candid discussion with the president when I was chairperson of COSASE, when he had just given out the golden handshake. And we said, sir, this is not correct. And he said, so what are you suggesting? He said, sir, let us have a policy in place that the president can make donations. And this year, we can appropriate 100, 200 billion. But we know you've appropriated that money for this particular. Then you use that one, that financial year. It is neater, it is more transparent, and nobody is going to accuse you or accuse government of favoring anybody, because the criteria will be there for everybody to see.
Okay.
So until we address that, we'll be gossiping, really.
Yeah. We're going to stop for a quick break, Agatha, and you come on. Yes, the Norman Magembe is telling Semuju that Sir Jim Ratcliffe of Manchester United has cut 200 jobs and scrapped free lunch for staff due to the club's financial crisis. And this is in response to Mandazi talk from Parliament. Let's stop for a quick break.
They literally took this Mandazi talk.
Yeah, welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. I have a message here. Your interview of the closure of USAID activities and the reduction of European aid going today fails to address the elephant in the room. Why are aid monies given for the past 6 years and so on? Okay, and says Dr. Ayume is under-informed. There will be no reconsideration. That funding is gone. Your own microphone, Dr. Ayume, for both coffee and whatever response you want to give.
No, I'll start with the issue of coffee. I think what I have not...
Starting with, does Dr. Ayume supervise the Lubowa Hospital? Oh, messages are coming here.
Also stopped from going there.
On the issue of coffee, I think what's not coming out clearly...
His Minister for Health, they were stranded outside.
What's not coming out clearly on the issue of coffee is that is the factory in Tungamo well-intentioned? Because I think we need to also explain to Ugandans that what are the advantages of exporting the raw coffee vis-a-vis something that has value on it. I think that's the government's position. Whether it's agricultural products, whether it is minerals and so forth. Then we can work backwards into these issues of the policies, the legalities behind it and all that. But personally, I think it makes a lot of business sense to export commodities where you have added value. Then the other issue on coffee...
That's not an issue. Everybody agrees on that. Then we also agree that there can be strategic intervention. Government can come in and invest money to promote value addition. That we also agree. But how does it do it? That's the elephant in the room.
Well, Moses Biaranga says we are not well informed about the Ntungamo coffee project. Who is saying that all coffee should be sent to Ntungamo? Uganda produces 400,000 tons, and Ntungamo only needs 10,000 tons annually for processing. So, and that is even less than what Ankole sub-region produces. So,
yes, that's the issue that needs to come out, that we need to add value to our products before export. And I'm not hearing that in the room, because that has to come out clearly. And then we work backwards, that how can we set up more of those Ntungamos in Uganda? The issue of the legalities, the processes, the policies, that can be addressed. But the position of government and the good is well-intentioned to ensure that we get better value for money on that. Whether it is minerals, whether it's agricultural products, whether it is fish, value addition needs to start before export.
Don't open can of worms. Just stay with coffee for this show.
Now, the other point I really wanted to make is that northern Uganda, for a long time, there have been misnomers that certain crops would not do well there, like coffee, cocoa, macadamia. Like West Nile had been a stronghold of tobacco, which has since fallen out of favor due to so many public health ratifications, closure of BAT and so forth. As I speak, the former UCD had done tests in West Nile, and it's been proven that coffee does well. So there are few farmers who have picked up on coffee, even in the greater northern Uganda. Cocoa, the number of farmers who are taking up cocoa. So I would really appeal to government, but also the private sector, to come and tap into that virgin area, because it's actually private sector led. But we just need some level of organization. There are cooperatives. Even in Koboko, we now have a cooperative on cocoa. But we need to scale up to make market sense for somebody to come and set up a factory, and even for greater purchasing power, because you need economies of scale.
Back to you, Tony. Charles in Entebbe says, kindly tell that gentleman to share more information about coffee for interested parties. Who should be joining coffee and why?
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to first address the points raised by Dr. Ayume. Yes, coffee grows also in northern Uganda, West Nile. My organization has set up an office in Kamdini, and actually yesterday I had a meeting with northern Uganda cooperative representatives here in Kampala. So we want to scale up organizing coffee farmers in the north. The challenge now is that there are no processing factories in the north. So we as private sector, I think we need to engage with the government to ensure that the farmers in northern Uganda can also add value to their coffee before they sell it.
You need a Tugume in northern Uganda.
I think many other people can play a role, not just Tugume. I think.
No, the point is
you need a promoter,
like he has invested in a Tugume project.
Yeah,
That's
I think strategic interventions like Honorable Katundu said are important. But how do you do it? Where do you place them? Those are issues that we need to maybe address. But yes, they're important. Like Dr. Yume said, in the north there was no infrastructure for coffee. So somebody has to come in. We as private sector will do our role to organize farmers, to train them. We have set up nurseries also, 2 nurseries there, and I think of this program we can discuss how to do more of that work in the north. Yes, most people can grow coffee in Uganda, like I said, in the east, south,
Actually,
central.
I have Edward Ntinda says there are over 14,000 Arabica coffee farmers in Nebi and Zombo districts.
Exactly. So the whole country, apart from Karamoja, some parts of Karamoja which are not very suitable, and maybe some parts of Nakasongola which are not, the rest of the country can grow coffee. So I think all of us as leaders, we need to promote this coffee growing, because looking at global statistics and trends, the market of coffee will still remain. Actually, it's projected to increase from this year at 174 million bags to next year 177 million bags demanded. So the prices are going to continue rising, at least in the medium term. We need to add value to our coffee. Yes, we need to, but we also need to address where we sell this coffee. We should not lie to ourselves that we are going to roast all our coffee in Uganda and sell it abroad. Exactly. So we need to look at the market dynamics. We need to work with the experts to see how we can better market our coffee abroad, and also how to increase our own domestic consumption, like Ethiopians and Brazilians are doing. So those are opportunities that we need to address.
Yeah. The Charles is still at it, and maybe I'll send these questions to you, Tony. Says, where can one access credible information about coffee in Uganda? What's the cost of quality coffee seedling, and where can I find it? How many types of coffee? Can coffee grow in any part of the country? We've done a bit about that. Can you put in manure in the holes before planting? I'll send these questions to you. Maybe you want to say a sentence or two.
Yeah, basically UCDA was rationalized, but there's a coffee department still in the Ministry of Agriculture. So I would encourage all Ugandans to approach the Ministry of Agriculture and their district production offices for more information about coffee.
Yeah. Yes, add it.
So
before you actually add, when I should ask Katundu a personal question. When I went to visit him in Butende, he had this farm. I used to call him a confused farmer. It has pineapples there, coffee there, and matoke here. So did the coffee thrive?
Yeah, because it was my tradition. It was the traditional coffee. Yeah. And so on, and it is still there.
Okay, that's good.
It is still there.
Yeah, not that it has gone to the standards, but it is still there. I intend some time
to
when
pick
I've
it
got
up.
when I've got some time outside what I'm doing currently to concentrate.
Okay. Agatha, you could close this topic now.
So
I hope I can trust you to close it.
So apart from the money we are talking about that came in the supplementary budget,
there's money. She's going to close it?
There is money that they are going to be given in this budget, 58 billion. There's a letter written on 25th March from Ministry of Finance.
This is in addition to 60?
Yes.
67. Now another...
Yeah. So and that's what you were asking, that of the $122 million dollars. So I think we are on course to completing it.
Right.
There's a letter that is written to all accounting officers, and they are saying that they want to ensure that the budget of 2025-2026 caters for critical budget commitments and outstanding domestic areas. So in that letter, what is included is 58 billion that is going to inspire coffee. So as you discuss, have that in mind, that more money is going to Ntungamo and that factory. But also, and I had hoped Tony would address that, I have seen people that are very involved in coffee saying, we do not need value addition. Like, we shouldn't talk about things for just the sake of talking about them, because the coffee beans are more, you don't have many Ugandans that drink coffee. So if we don't have a market here for that coffee, why don't we continue exporting the beans? If you could maybe enlighten us on that.
Yeah, as a private sector person, I think any investment must be backed by market research and a feasibility study. Uganda currently has a very low domestic consumption capacity for coffee. So we are looking at Uganda and maybe the regional markets as being those where we can easily sell. It's going to be difficult to export roasted coffee in Europe or in the US because of non-tariff barriers. So we shouldn't lie to ourselves. So we need to really think clearly the end game. What is our end game? When we roast all our coffee, are we going to drink it all? Are we going to export it all? Who's going to buy it? Those are questions that should inform any investment in value addition.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so our next topic was going to be South Sudan or NS Sudan.
Oscar, I think that shifts the debate really fundamentally about what we should be doing as a country in terms of where our emphasis is in value addition for purposes of export or local consumption. But like the figures are showing, domestically we may not be doing well. But
and as you said, that within the next 3, 4, 5 years, exporting the bean gives you money. But Tony Muguya is saying here that it is definitely going to change.
No, I don't know whether he's saying it's going to change.
Yeah, he's saying they will not like the bean. Those countries are starting to say they don't like the bean.
Not really.
Not really.
That. I just say that globally, consumption of coffee is increasing. However, there are market barriers. When it comes to non-tariff barriers, when it comes to exporting roasted coffee across borders. We have seen a similar situation for our milk, sugar, even within the East African community. So these are realities that anybody should address before you think of exporting outside your border.
I get you. So, Abdul, we will discuss the
oil and so on.
We'll discuss the Sudan's.
The way the international market works, that someone should travel a company from Texas to come and sell chicken here and chips, and Ugandans are lining up there. The ones being sold by Ugandans, they don't buy.
So
and that applies even to coffee. So this one, you are going to roast it in Tungamu. You need to be mindful.
You could brand it properly so that
we
become
Oscar,
like a Mexican company.
Oscar, we in the oil and gas sector, there has been a very huge debate and big decision to be taken whether we do a refinery here or we export crude oil. Big debates and big decisions. So we seem like we are going to have the same. Whether
in the oil, you have Total. You will not be the one exporting. You are just providing the raw material. Total will export
60% of the.
But does Total want a refinery here?
But to have Tugume
Total wants
it to Europe.
Crude to export crude.
That's the total order.
I don't know. I was apologizing to listeners that we are not going to discuss Sudan this morning. Just as we've not discussed floods or Umeme. Umeme definitely next week, and Sudan definitely next week. But now Agatha is the youngest, I think, or Charles here. These young people do not know how Shaka Sali used to sign out. We watched. Do you know how you give me the words if you still remember, if you know.
So you are saying
words.
we don't know Shaka Sali.
No. I've been specific to sign out. How did he used to sign out of his program? I think only like the people on this side would know. Even Semuju may not know. No, Semuju knows. We've been watching, not listening.
Maybe he listens.
Yes.
He listens to TV.
When I first watched him, I was quite amazed to see this big, slow-speaking man on American TV. He was doing a stellar job, Abdul Katundu.
He was, and I was privileged to appear on his show.
They have John B. Gemano saying, "Join me in mourning the passing of a journalism and talk show giant." He passed away at Shaka Sali, passed away at 71 years.
Yeah, Shaka was a giant. Really a giant. One of those journalists, who made his mark on the international scene, rising from a background which had nothing to do with journalism at all. From a very, very humble background, shifting professionals, because at quite an early age he had joined the mini army as a paratrooper. Things didn't work out and he fled to exile. He wasn't even a university graduate, and he took the opportunity to study. I can only compare Shaka Sali to Professor Kwesiga, Charles Kwesiga. Professor Charles Kwesiga also left here in 1971 after the fall of the Bote I regime. He wasn't a university graduate, but he had been working for the General Service Unit at that time. He was a security operative, like indeed Shaka was an army officer during Amin time. So he goes to Nairobi. Eventually, they end up in the US. Both of them started to get PhDs. One eventually becomes even a professor. And Shaka goes into journalism and he makes his niche at that level. But he also remained a very patriot. You need to watch or participate or to be one of his guests at the Voice of America. The legendary deep voice will always remain, and he had this, that's terrific. My life is so terrific. Or it is okay. He used to say that. And about inspiring and expiring, those were his words and so on. He remained Ugandan and he remained a Mchiga. Very, very, he was so proud about calling himself a cavalry kid and so on. And he also remained very, very focused on Ugandan politics. Every time he'll have an opportunity to speak about Uganda, he'll be talking about what is going on home and so on. He must have inspired very, very many young people, especially those people who love journalism. He is a kind of a journalist who was not a gossiper. You see, these days, with due respect, there is a lot. There is a lot of gossip around and so on, but and research. Whenever he would have a guest, he would know more about the details of the subject he was going to interview his guest on, the country, the personality, and so on. To me, he's one of the best Uganda has ever produced. Let his soul rest in peace.
Honorable Semijo.
In 2016, we had a debate at Serena for presidential candidate. I was responsible for my candidate, Dr. Besigye. Mr. Museveni's participation was conditional. One of the conditions was that Shaka must not ask me any question. Yet he was co-hosting that debate with Nancy. And because the organizers wanted the debate to succeed, so Shaka sat there. He asked all the other candidates, about 7 of them, but not Museveni. Candidate Museveni said he doesn't want to be asked by Shaka. So his views about Uganda, maybe because Museveni also has intelligence, maybe publicly and privately, he is one of those who thought he needed to make a contribution for better governance in his home country. So his journalism went beyond just interviewing people, but he remained an interested party in how Uganda was being managed. So we'll miss him. You always feel good when you see a Ugandan working for a high-profile international platform, Voice of America, and BBC. I see all the others and feel very proud about them.
Yeah. Tony Muguya, using Shaka Sali's words, says, time is not always the best ally.
I want to appeal to all Ugandans to focus on coffee. That is where we have a comparative advantage as a country, and we can use coffee the way Vietnam did after that devastating war to transform itself. So yes, as Ugandans, let's use coffee to be the next Vietnam. Thank you.
Agatha, time isn't a good ally. Then say, get better, but not bitter.
So I started watching Shaka Sali when Straight Talk Africa would be aired on one of the local TVs. Must have been WBS. Yeah. So every Wednesday, after news here, there will be Straight Talk Africa. And I think at first I didn't know that he was from Kabale, but with time he would like take every opportunity to talk about how he's proud of his roots in Kabale. And his sign out, I think, was stay tuned. Like he would like point like this, and I think he was an FDC guy, like because he liked this. Yeah, but FDC stole it. when now we do it, everyone thinks we are FDC. But yeah, I think he was the people that when you're a journalist you look up to learn a thing or two about. I think for me, Shaka Sali was one of those in terms of how he would be prepared for an interview, how he would know his interviewee well enough to ask relevant questions. And yeah, may his soul rest in peace.
And Dr. Charles Ayume on microphone. You will conclude gang today, but maybe you wish to talk about also the USAID, any loose ends. But let me use Shaka Sali's words here. He says, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to host you, Dr. Charles Ayume on the Capital Gang.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Well, Shaka Sali, may his soul rest in eternal peace. Well, I had seen him on the airwaves for a very long time. And he's one of those people who held the Ugandan flag up. And what used to intrigue me was he had lived in the US for a very long time, but still maintained the accent of back home. He had never become Americanized. Speaking through the nose, yeah. There are people who have just stopped at Bwebaja and then the accent changes. Never been to the airport. On their way to the airport. Yeah, but yes.
Dr. Ayume, you are seated in a NRM seat. NRM is the one in power. Shouldn't make derogatory comments on the population.
Of course, like Honorable Kantuntu had mentioned, his background from military, I mean somebody who was in means military and then makes it to the US, studies, does a PhD. I think for me that's a very interesting story to tell to the youth and to inspire many more to come. On the international level, I think there were two journalists who inspire me. Of course, nationally, Honorable Semuju.
Is this because he's here?
On the international level, field journalist Christine Amanpo, but then front room desk journalist, I think it was Shaka Sali. I used to follow those a lot. On the issue of the health sector, I think there is need for concern, but there is no cause for panic. Our health sector has remained resilient.
You are now speaking like NRM.
Our health sector
is in NRM seat.
Would you need the permission from NRM to panic?
Our health sector has remained resilient, Oscar and listeners out there. Even during COVID, we came out. The results of the Uganda Demographic Health Survey showed we had almost halved maternal mortality from 333 to 189. That's the best in the region. Because of those aftershocks of COVID, we still remained resilient. So even with these budget cuts, yes, I think it's an opportunity for internal self-reflection. And like Honorable Kantuntu said, that for every dark cloud there's a silver lining. We now need to start the hard talk. We need to be intentional and put resources where they matter most. Hopefully, in what's left of the 90 days, the people in Washington can reconsider and give us at least a drawdown period like they had put, as I had mentioned, the 10-year roadmap. Thank you very much.
I don't want them to.
We were given a 10-year roadmap by the partners on the drawdown for aid to the health sector.
will always be thinking, by the way, they always consider when they take a decision. I think it's time to wake up. Let's do our own thing.
Well,
it's about survival now.
And then, Honorable Semuju, on the issue of, I think it's normal for any country to support the private sector, whether it is day pharmaceutical, whether it is. The question that we should be asking ourselves is the processes, how the legalities, and the issue of the government shareholding. But there is no big corporation that has never had, even what's his name, Elon Musk, SpaceX. There's a lot of U.S. funding for him to take people.
He's in trouble over it.
Yes.
You've always been in trouble, but the governments always put money
somewhere
in the private sector, because you see, at the end of the day, private sector is for public good.
Okay, Abdul, let me first make a correction. This man is called Abdul Katuntu. Don't put in an N.
My apologies. I'm from Koboko.
Okay. So Shaka Sali in April 2024, when people had been saying he had died then, a quote here: reports regarding my demise have been hugely exaggerated. The messages that came from the audience, relatives and friends, among others, clearly demonstrate that I have not occupied space in life, but I have lived. Let's keep human hope alive. Thank you so much for listening to the Capital. Thank you so much for listening to the Capital Gang. Thank you, Dr. Ayume, first time on Gang. Thank you, Mr. Mugia, the coffee man, first time on Gang. You missed my introduction of Agatha at Haile here. Sunday Vision said one of the admirable women in Uganda. Good to have you on Gang. Honorable Katuntu, Honorable Semuju. Thank you. Honorable Ayume. Let us know where Idi. Please let us know where Idi lunch is. Hopefully tomorrow. I am Oscar Star Cafe. Thank you very much for powering the gang. I am Oscar Semoya Msoke, and I shall see you next week.